Hey folks, what's going on? We are back again with another session of our CCNA Initiative. And today we're closing out chapter six, chapter six being titled Basic Switch Management, right? We went over a few things, right? Remote access using via layer one or layer three, okay? Using those application protocols, SSH or Telnet. Um, showed you guys how to configure it, how that looks, the official certification guide. It gives you, of course, a config checklist that you guys can take down for your notes. We went over how to access a switch, right? But using remote authentication, so like a Windows server or Linux server, what have you, right? A couple things you can put in place, right? Using either the Radius protocol or the TACX Plus protocol, right? Um, we also, saw how it looked to go ahead and enable IPv4, right, for a switch, right? And why that's so significant is because, of course, a switch by default is layer two, right? Um, Nowadays, newer switches that come from Cisco out the box, they are able to do layer three functions as well, which makes them a multi-layer switch. Okay. And with everything that you guys are learning, right? Um, you guys are practicing everything in your lab, right? In Packet Tracer, maybe you guys have a physical lab, right? That you were blessed with to go ahead and be able to practice on and prepare for your exam. Um, this last section, of course, what I talked about yesterday. I know it's real boring on our theory days. This last section goes over a couple of settings that are useful for you in your lab, right? And today we're going to go ahead and go over it, right? I'm going to run you guys through some configuration. Um, I'm going to run you guys through some configuration, and then we're going to see what we went over yesterday, okay? So what do I have in this lab today, right? If you guys can see my screen, I have a switch and I have a Linux box. I was actually doing some work with a colleague, right? So we were practicing some Linux stuff, nothing too major, but Linux is not the core of these videos, so I'm not going to harp too much on that. Okay, just think of this as a PC or a host that's going to connect to this switch. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull up this switch. All right. So we got this switch, right? Straight out of the box, right? Unconfigured, right? We consoled in via layer one. Let's go ahead and configure this bad boy up, okay? We're in user exec mode, right? I'm gonna put the keyword enable so we can go to privilege exec mode, right? And we need to get the privilege exec mode, and this is just a reminder, so we can go ahead and make changes to the entire device, aka globally, right? So we need to get to global configuration mode. And to get to global configuration mode, we need to go ahead and type the command configure terminal, right? Or config T has some folks, some seasoned folks like to shorten. Okay, so let's go ahead and first let's go ahead and give it a name, right? Let's be nice, right? We're going to call it a switch one. Okay, it is still a layer two device. Okay, still a layer two device. Let's go ahead and just confirm it out. Okay, so IP interface brief, right? Let's see if there's any IP addresses configured. There's none, right? We have our IP address section under each interface, right? If we had our switch virtual interfaces, right? What you guys learned about, right? In the enable IPv4 um, for a switch section, you guys learned about that. So none of that's configured. Okay, so we don't have that configured. We're good. Everything's working as it should, right? Let's go ahead and configure, right? A switch virtual interface, right? We're going to keep it at VLAN 1, right? We have VLAN 1 from a layer 2, from a layer 2 perspective, that's already in place, right? Now we're going to go ahead and configure the layer 3 instance, all right? There we go, okay? And we are going to enable that interface with the no shutdown command. Right? A syslog message should pop up, okay? Telling us that layer 1 is up and layer 2 is up, right? Now let's go ahead and configure layer 1 and layer 2 and layer 3, okay? So Let me reset the terminal. All right. Let's see how this looks. Let's do a show run interface VLAN 1. Okay. So we got a configuration, right? Configuration is set in there. It's saved in that temporary memory. We're good. And of course, we saved it to the permanent config, but show run is my favorite command. So we're good there, right? I got that set. Let's go ahead and confirm, right? Layer 1 and layer 2. Interface VLAN 1. Okay. Like I taught you guys before, right? This first line before the comma means for layer 1. Second one is layer 2, right? Line protocol, that means layer 2, all right? So it's telling us right here, layer 1 is up, layer 2 is up, right? It's telling us we have an IP address, right? IP address is configured, right? And it also tells us, right, what you guys learned this week is this is an SVI, right? A switch virtual interface. We have our IP address, okay? That's set, right? We have a subnet. We have everything that we typically see, right? MTU, bandwidth, delay, right? Reliability, right? A lot of these things, right? We see all that. All that's good, okay? So layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3 is fine, right? And another thing that we do have to check, just to give you guys a refresher, is just check the layer 2 instance to make sure it is there, right? Layer 2 is right here. We have that VLAN, so we're good. So we're going to keep everything in VLAN 1 for this lab, right? I'm going to go ahead and plug this PC in to any port, right? I'm not going to make it specific, right? And we are going to just prepare for the lab, give it an IP address in its same subnet, right? Make things real easy. Let's go ahead and log into this PC. And I'm going to go ahead and make some changes. Give me 1 second, guys. There we go. Right. Do this manually. 10.10.10.50. Oh, froze for a little bit. There we go. 5.65.65.0. 10.10.10.1. All right, we're good to go. DNS, even though we can't get outside my lab, we're just going to give it Google. And we are good. We're not going to assign it a route. We're good. We're going to apply it. We're going to turn it off. We're going to turn it back on. Boom. Okay. Right. Let's go ahead and confirm layer 3 connectivity. Let's go ahead and pull up the terminal. Right. Let's go ahead and ping. Right. Because we need all this in place before we review some of the things that we learned in this chapter. And of course, before we go over some of the things that we learned yesterday in our theory. Okay. So from this PC, I can actually ping 10.10.10.1, which is SVI interface VLAN 1's IP address. So we're good to go. So we can go ahead and minimize this PC, and we're going to go back to the switch, right? So we got all this in place, right? And since this is working as our switch and our router, there's one thing that I did forget to configure. Don't make a note of this now, right? Since this is going to act as our router, I'm going to go ahead and enable IP routing, okay? Right? And you only enable that command only if this is going to actually absolute work as a router and a switch simultaneously, okay? So let's go ahead and remove all this, right? And we're going to test a few things, okay? So I put in a lot of commands, right? I put in a lot of commands recently, right? What if I wanted to put in the same command again, right? Just like we went over yesterday, I can hit the up arrow on my keyboard and it's going to show me a certain amount of commands, right? That's in my history buffer, right? We went over the history buffer yesterday, okay? The history buffer is going to save the last few several commands in that buffer, okay? And that comes in configured on the Cisco iOS by default. You don't have to configure anything, right? Now you could make modifications if you would like, right? So let's take a look at, let's try some of the commands we learned about yesterday. First, we're going to do a show history, right? And that's just a command that lists the commands that are currently held in the history buffer. Okay, so this is a fun command to go ahead and just know, keep in your back pocket, right? Because you see, right? Let's say, we have Maurice, he's configuring a device, and he needs to see what's his last few commands been. He can say, okay, so I can do the same thing maybe for a new VLAN, and I can just make modifications. So my buffer looks fine, right? Right? So let's go ahead and take a look. There's another command, right, that we can go ahead and set, right? We can go ahead and allow, right, just for a single user, right, the size, right, and you have to be logged on to this current session, right, on the Cisco device. You get to set the size of, your history buffer, right? So I can go ahead and type in terminal, right, history, okay, size, and I can set the size of the history buffer, right? Right? So I can put all the way up to 256, right? And this is just for this session, right? And so now if I do a show history, right, you see it's a little bit longer, right? Now it kept even more commands, okay? All right, let's go ahead and keep going, right? Last but not least, right? Um, every time you leave a switch, right, you end the session, you restart a session, the way that I just changed my history size, you'd have to do that every session, right? Maybe you don't want to do that, right? Maybe you want to go ahead and say, you know what, every time somebody logs on, um, their history buffer size is set, and we made it larger than the default. You can actually go to line configuration mode in global configuration mode, right? So of course, we're going to work with the console for now, okay? So we're going to go to line console 0. You can, of course, go to the VTY lines, right? And you can go ahead and put the command history, okay, size, and of course it tells you set history buffer size, right? And you can set it there, right? So what does that mean? So that means Brian, that means Ryan, that means maybe Margarita can log into this device, right? They don't have to set the history buffer size. It is already set by default for anybody that logs in via the console, right? And vice versa. We can go ahead and do it for the VTY line as well. So if somebody logs in remotely, we can go ahead and do it that way. All right. Let's go ahead and keep moving. So that takes care of the history buffer. Okay. Hopefully that example made sense. All right. So go ahead and take a look at a few more things, right? One of the things that we went over is the theory of logging synchronous, right? So by default, right, with Cisco iOS, if if something's happening, right, something happens to the device, some changes, a syslog message is going to pop up, right? A syslog message is this. Let me go ahead and give you guys an example of how that looks, right? I'm going to go ahead and shut down a interface. Okay, it's going to shut down VLAN 1, right? All right, so this is a syslog message, right? These are messages that come up, right? And they're unsolicited, right? Nobody asked for it, it just popped up, okay? And they're telling us the most latest update and keeping us informed of what's going on with the device, as it affects it, right? We'll go over the alarm, numbers and this soon, right? But for now, right, this is a syslog message, okay? So what if, okay, Maurice or Cornelius is configuring a switch, and these syslog messages are coming up faster than expected, right? And it's really annoying, right? And we don't want it to pop up at all, right? We can go ahead, right? Enable this interface. Okay, we can go ahead and actually turn off logging, right? For the type of access, we're accessing the device, either it be the virtual terminal lines, the BTY lines, or the console, right? So let's go ahead and turn off logging for the console. So no logging, Okay, let me go ahead. And I believe I may just have to do it. There we go. All right, we're good. Let me, there we go. There we go. And so we can do no login console, right? And so what does that mean? That means if I go back, let's reset this terminal, make it clean. And let's say I shut down the interface again. So let's go to interface VLAN 1 and let's shut it down. Let's see if a syslog message pops up. Right? So it's been a while, right? And nothing has popped up. No messages, no anything, right? But if I go ahead and do a show logging, I guarantee you, right? We go ahead and go to the latest, right? I didn't change the time. I should have done that. I do apologize, guys. But since it's on UTC time, we can go ahead and take a look at the most recent log, right? And we can see right here, right? Because we just changed it, right? Of course, it matches up to the time right here, right? That I brought VLAN down, but it didn't pop up. It did not pop up. So that's the effect of shutting down logs, right? That's the effects of disabling logs, right, on the console. But do we want to do that, right? Maybe your organization does, right? Maybe just for your session, you don't want to see logs, right? Because you know where to access them, right? What I told you guys yesterday, the Cisco developers that created the Cisco iOS, they found a compromise because there were some people on one side of the ship and when people on another side of the ship that said, hey, we want logs to show up, and some people were like, hey, we don't want logs to show up. So there's a compromise that they created. You can actually go ahead and put in the command, it's called logging synchronous, right? Which basically tells the iOS to synchronize the syslog messages to display with the messages requested using show commands. Okay. And so what it does, it just helps out, if you're typing something, it won't interrupt you, what have you. Okay. So let's go ahead. All right. And where do we leave off at? Did we ever enable the interface? Re-enable the interface? I don't think we did. So, and let's just verify, right? Because sometimes we can't scroll back. So VLAN 1. Nope, it's shut down. Right. So first, let's do this, right? Let's go ahead and do this logging synchronous command, right? And let's see how it looks. Logging synchronous, and let me show you guys, right? Synchronized message output, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. There we go. All right, so we're gonna drop down one level, right? Because we're still in global config mode, and I wanna make that change and enable I wanna go ahead and enable the VLAN again, okay? So I'm gonna do a no shutdown, and we're gonna see where that syslog message pops up. Okay. All right. And we are, there we go. There we go. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see. So let's go ahead. So now if we do a show login, big mode, login, go, right? And you see if I'm typing, it doesn't pop up. Okay. You see it synchronizes with the CLI, right? All good, right? All good. Everything's well. So that's what login synchronous looks like. Okay. Last but not least, right? We have exec timeout, right? And what does exec timeout do, right? I'm sorry, this is second to last. Exec timeout what it does, it can go ahead and mitigate the time of inactivity in a session. So whether it be via console, whether it be via SSH, you can actually mitigate that, right? So let's go ahead and we can configure that in either any of the line configuration modes, either console or VTY lines, right? We're still going to go ahead and do it in console, right? So we're going to do exec timeout. Whoops. There we go. All right. So the first value, it gives us in minutes, right? Second value, it gives us seconds, right? I'm going to set it to 30 seconds, okay? Because I'm logged in on the console. So let's see what happens if I don't do nothing for 30 seconds. So as you guys can see, right? As you guys can see, my session just ended. Okay, right? 30 seconds of inactivity. The switch saw it. Now that I configured it, and it said, "Hey, you're logged in via the console, right? Con 0, right? I'm going to go ahead and stop this session, right? And why is that a command? Why did the developers create that, right? Well, people are humans, right? Let's say Maurice is maybe configuring a switch, but in the middle of him configuring it, he sees it's time for lunch. Maybe he gets up, he goes with his colleagues and he goes grab something to eat. He forgets to close the session, right? Somebody can walk up to his desk, maybe a bad actor, maybe a hacker, can go ahead and start configuring stuff. If we go ahead and have that exec timeout, we can go ahead and say, even if we send out an email, right, or put a message saying, hey, make sure you log out, this will go ahead and be a fail safe and say, hey, we'll go ahead and just close your session if there's inactivity. Okay. So let's go ahead and keep going. All right. Last but not least, the last theory that we've discussed is no IP domain lookup, right? Why is that command so special, right? So we configured layer 3, right? We gave this an IP address. It has all of that. I'm gonna try to type something and see what comes out, right? I'm trying to type something, but I don't have access to the CLI. This is pretty weird. Translating whatever I typed in domain server, right, to the domain server, right? All 255s, right? And so now I don't have access to my CLI. This is very weird. And this is holding up me configuring the switch, right? So if it was Maurice configuring the switch, it's holding him up, right? What's happening, right? So, of course, I manually disabled it, right? What that is, right? What it's doing is now the device has an IP address. What iOS is trying to do is it's trying to do a DNS name resolution, right? On what I typed in because it thinks it's a host name. Okay. Because it thinks what I typed in is, hey, Dave, I think you might be trying to get to a device. I think you might, so I'm gonna go ahead and resolve it for you and reach out to DNS server. I haven't configured a DNS server, but the iOS is going to do it regardless. Okay. So to avoid this problem, one command we can go ahead and do, and we have to make sure we do it in global config mode, right, is do the no IP domain lookup command. If I put that in, right, let's say I type in what I typed in before, all it's going to say is a unknown command or computer. It's not even going to try to reach out to the DNS server. It's not even going to try to attempt to resolve the host name into an IP address, right? So that is the benefits of, no IP domain lookup, right? I can go ahead and, configure that, and it'll be on this device globally, right? No matter what user logged in, how you logged in via layer one, maybe a console, or layer three. We can go ahead and mitigate that. Okay. Well, with that being said, this is the end of chapter 6. Like I told you guys yesterday, go over everything that I've told you to go over. The end of the chapter, you guys have the book. If you don't have the book, reach out. But go over everything at the end of chapter 6, which is, of course, chapter 6 being configuring basic switch management. Go over that because come next Tuesday, right? This next session, we are going to start chapter 7, which is in volume 1, which is configuring and verifying switch interfaces. You guys have a great day and a great weekend.